You're watching the Chucktown Wind Report Extended Weekend Outlook from Friday, November the 6th through Monday, November the 9th. All right, we have a firm Atlantic ridge built out here to our east and a separate lobe of high pressure that developed just to the east of the Appalachian Mountains. These two have been successful in breaking up the coastal trough, or what was left of the remnant frontal boundary that parked off of our coastline, responsible for the cloud cover and the dreary conditions for the last few days. It feels like we've been living in Seattle. I think we'll see some breaks in that today and see some sunshine again. However, we do have a ridge axis that is dropped down over South Carolina, southern North Carolina, South Carolina, and into Georgia, which means a weak wind regime for today and additional moisture in the area. So we could see a very mild sea breeze develop along south-southeasterly winds today and create a line of showers, maybe just along the coast or inland. It depends on how much moisture is available below the ridge axis, but not much movement of air when we have this kind of a setup. So very, very weak. And as we get into tomorrow with a south or southwesterly flow ahead of this cold front, we see the moisture tapping into the Pacific now. It's drying out over the mountains of Mexico, but as it taps into the Gulf of Mexico, we could see an additional surge of energy and rain potentials heading towards the southeast region. I don't see a lot in the wind potentials because the low-level jets are just fairly weak along the tail end of this boundary. And if we take a look at the ads for aviation, we go to the surface, we'll go to 3,000 feet to check out these low-level jets, and we see on the tail end below Tennessee, things really weaken off to about 20 to 30 knots. According to these wind barbs, we're not seeing very much at 3,000 feet, and even at 6,000 feet, which is a little higher up, we're only seeing 30 to 40 knots below Tennessee. And this is all the area that will be including the Charleston area for South Carolina. It looks like most of this energy is going to stay to our north. Even if we look at the sounding analysis for Nashville, Tennessee, we see at these lower levels down here between 850 and 700 millibars, even a little bit lower than that some of these values are only at 20 to 30 knots. This is from the 7 p.m. sounding from last night from the weather balloon. Even if we look at Jackson, Mississippi, these low-level jets are just very weak. So I'm not seeing very much. As far as rain goes for the Charleston area with this cold front, the models are playing it down quite a bit. They're not seeing very much rain tapping in from the Gulf of Mexico. The potentials go up higher as an area of high pressure. Let me go back and show you what's going on here. Okay, so we have a cold front approaching the southeast region, and then behind this we have a large dome of high pressure building in, and this is all going to come together and sweep across the United States behind this cold front. What that's going to do is it's going to increase the gradient tightly behind it and increase the northerly flow. So we're looking at a fairly strong northerly flow for Sunday, probably northeast to northeast winds, really starting to work down the coastline. And as that high pressure continues off to the east in the pattern that we see right now, a lot of this moisture along the boundary, we're going to be getting into a situation like we had early this week where a frontal boundary sort of parks off our coastline and then the high pressure wedges it back into the coast behind it. And it looks like kind of a carbon copy of earlier this week with cooler air diving down behind it. It's going to be a stronger high pressure, so we're expecting much cooler temps, probably getting into the upper 50s to low 60s for highs on Sunday and into Monday, and then slowly warming as we get into Tuesday. Yes, if we look at the GRE for radar, here is the rain potential outlook right now, what's going on. We see a lot of these heavier rains sticking to the northern Mississippi and up above. Things really dry out down here over Mexico, but you can see the atmospheric river that taps into the Pacific Ocean. And if we look at just the visible, we can see how it dries out down here over Texas. Infrared shows the connection to the Pacific, where a lot of this moisture is originating from in the upper atmosphere as it travels up and along the boundary and settles down to the surface. So again, with the models not expecting very much as far as rainfall, here's a 24-hour outlook from NOAA, where a lot of the heavier activity, once it does tap into the Gulf over the next 24 hours, the tapping into the Gulf of Mexico will drive most of the rains into Louisiana and Mississippi, but as time goes on, those rains will weaken as it approaches the southeast region. We see our area staying on the drier side of things, and the heavier rains offshore means that the frontal boundary is going to be parking out there for several days and generating more rain over the Gulf Stream. So it looks like our rain line could get a little heavy at times along the coast as that high pressure works eastwards and drives that rain back in. Once the winds turn north, we could see a few showers here and there, but it's going to increase as the winds lean more northeast to east and then eventually southeast into early next week, or probably mid next week. All right, so I want to take a look at the Charleston area. And right now, fairly weak winds, very weak northerly regime from that lobe of high pressure that's upstate. We're only seeing 3 knots in the harbor to the open areas. I want to take a look at North Folly because these northerly winds are going to be affecting this area. And you can see the models start sort of picking up significantly for Sunday. And if we take a look in detail for Folly North End, this is the Seaman station that's governed by the National Data Buoy Center, so it only gets 1-hour updates, but it does give off a good model output for our northerly winds being in an outcropped area where the winds can actually pick up even more. So we follow the models. The GFS has been guiding. It's been very aggressive on this build for Sunday, and now some of these medium range models or medium resolution models like the NAM 12K are starting to pick up on it as well. So as we get into Sunday, more models are coming into view. As the time goes on, we see the medium to low resolution, medium to high resolution models start to come into play here. And if we look down below in our computer forecast tables, here's the GFS for Sunday. We're showing 24 knots at a peak around 10 a.m. with gusts to 31 knots. And if we look at the North American model 12 kilometer, where it's starting to pick up, it's coming into agreement into the 20s, the low 20s for some of these builds. The WaveWatch 3 model, that's also a medium resolution model. That's actually saying 24 knots. So we're starting to see more agreement from other models on this. Even the Canadian model holds it up into the upper teens. So we're looking at the very least upper teens, and then mainly hitting 20 to 25 knots and possible gusts over 30, and that lasts right on through Monday. So the Canadian keeps it building through Monday, actually builds it even stronger, but some of the other models are starting to show it fading out a little bit on Monday and then fading out by Tuesday. So that's our wind outlook for the area. High tide today will be at, let's see, 6:03 p.m. Low tide at 11:29 a.m. I'm sorry, I think that's for Sunday. My apologies. Let me back up a little bit. Yes, today, low tide at 9:51 a.m. and high tide at 4:33. So it looks like Sunday's low tide will be at 11:29. So that's our tide information for the area. All right, I think that's going to do it for the wind report. We're looking at weak winds today. Go back to our surface map. Weak winds today below 10 knots from the south or south-southeast wind regime. As we get into tomorrow, we could see some winds picking up. We may tap a few low teens here and there. We have marine layering going on as well, so I'm not seeing a very high build for tomorrow, especially those low-level jets being so weak. I think we may see somewhere between 8 and 12 knots ahead of that cold front, and then some higher winds up and around and near some of the thunderstorms that develop along it. And as we wake up Sunday morning, we're going to wake up to a very strong northerly wind regime. We're looking at 20 to 25 knots north-northeast to northeast with gusting over 30 knots. And that should last right on through Monday with maybe a slight tick downwards, upper teens to low 20s with gusts into the mid to upper 20s. And then as we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, it's a little further out. Winds weaken even more than that. All right, so let's take a look at the tropics. And we have a little bit of activity. Remember, our tropical season, hurricane season, does not end until November the 30th. So we have a couple of disturbances. One down over the Yucatan Peninsula expected to slide into the Bay of Campeche. There is a cold front coming, so this one's not expected to make it. They're giving it a 20% of the next 48 hours and 20% the next 5 days. So very low percentage there. However, if we look over at this particular area, that is just east of Leeward Islands, it's going to be sliding over to the north of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, and the formation is 0% for the next 48 hours, as it's just a wave at this point. But over the next couple of days, into 5 days, they're giving it a 30% chance. There's a little bit of warmer water in that area, and the Gulf Stream is just to the west of this, so the water temperature is not the most favorable. If we look at water temperatures, this is the Sport SST from NASA, and we can see the water's cooling down since October 16th to present. So this is a loop from then until now. You see the water's really kind of cooling down a little bit now. The warmer waters of the Gulf Stream look like they're sticking around 80 to 82 degrees, but you see these cool pockets of water developing just north of the Bahamas and starting to mix in along the cooler shelf waters of the southeast region. So whatever develops here could be a cold core system as a result, with just very little warm water to feed it, and especially with that high pressure working in Sunday, Monday, some cooler air down into the region, it would likely be a cold core system, making it subtropical or even extratropical if it does form. The model outlook, we'll look at the jet stream for the country as far as if this thing is possible to make landfall. Now, the Euro models have this at the 500 millibar level. I'm looking for jet stream pattern here. Jet stream's a little higher up, but this is indicative of what the jet stream might be doing at a lower level to help for steering guidances. As we go into time over the next 24 hours, we see a general west to east flow of the Gulf Stream, the jet stream, and that's due in part by a warm El Nino or strong El Nino pulling up a subtropical jet. The subtropical jet is actually in a positive tilt up through the southeast United States right now, where the polar jet is staying receded up to our north. So as time goes on with the Euro model, what it does is it actually splits the jet stream on Sunday, right following that high pressure, where we see a split here. We have a diving down the polar jet to our north, and the subtropical jet stays to our south. So that's what we call a split. And the general movement for all of this air is going to be from west to east, and that's going to be the trend for the next several days. I don't see that breaking anytime soon. In fact, if we go 120 hours out, even into Wednesday and even into Thursday, we see a lot of this steering activity pulling west to east. So I'm betting that this storm is going to be a fish storm. Now, if we run the GFS model, and we can see this coming together north of Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, and the GFS does develop this a little bit. You can't really tell. I mean, it does drop the pressure down to 1,014.15 millibars. It doesn't look like it's going to become tropical in nature, maybe just a closed low pressure system, but it does take it away from the coastline in time as that jet stream steers it off around to the northeast around the high pressure ridge that will be building from the one that is coming now. Now, if we look at the Euro model, here's today at 0 hours. I'm going to run this one as well. And you can see this energy coming together along just to the east of the Bahamas and sliding up. And then eventually the Euro takes this back out to sea as well. So both models calling this a fish storm at this point and not developing it into anything significant. It could, at the very most, develop into a very weak subtropical storm. However, I'm betting more of a closed low pressure system that gains a little bit of momentum along the warmer Gulf Stream waters. So that will be it for the tropics, and I think that's going to do it for the Chucktown Wind Report. Thanks for watching.